Welcome to a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Mace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guests: actor, General Hospital, Perry Mason, How to Get Away with Murder, Falcon Crest, William Moses.
Billy's in a mid-yawn. That's a good way to start the show with Billy in a mid-yawn.
Oh, man.
How are you?
How you doing, brother?
I got the gout.
You got the
I never even heard of the gout. I guess that's. I remember the gout from Jiggs and Maggie, the old comic strip growing up in the Daily News. Jiggs had the gout in his big toe, and he couldn't walk.
You're the only guy who remembers Jiggs and Maggie.
Wait a second. Do you remember Jiggs and Maggie?
I do.
Well, then I'm not the only guy who remembers Jiggs and Maggie.
What our audience, maybe there's 20 people out there. Well, maybe with our audience.
Maybe our audience, there's maybe a few more.
Maybe a few more. But Jiggs and Maggie, yeah,
Jiggs
sure.
and Maggie.
No idea what you're talking about.
I got the gout.
I always heard it was the rich man's disease. No offense. It was a rich man's disease. The kings used to get it from eating rich food. That's what I heard. But I know a guy. This guy, Ray Weldon, he was a Vietnam vet. Real whack job. Great athlete. But he used to eat nothing but Dinty Moore stew out of a can. You know what I mean?
Dinty Moore stew. Jiggs ate Dinty Moore stew.
I got the gout.
And he got the gout.
There you go. There's the link.
We solved it. Dinty Moore stew.
Stay away from Dinty Moore stew.
Dinty Moore's an Irishman, isn't he? Dinty Moore?
I don't know. But there are a lot of, everybody wants to be Irish, Frank. You know, they all give me that fucking horse shit.
Derek doesn't.
Derek?
I'm 13% Irish.
You
13%?
are. Can you prove it?
You got a helmet or an anteater down there?
Oh, that's pretty funny.
13% Irish, huh?
Which I hope it's not the 13% that.
I like to get that 13% in the right spot. I don't know, man. Dinty Moore, maybe. I always told you a story about the Blarney Stones not being Irish. They had all Irish bartenders, but they were run by Jews. You know, the Blarney Stones in New York, the fast, you know, used to go down 75-cent beer and all you can eat.
Derek, while we're amusing ourselves, can you look up Dinty Moore on the internet?
Let's see if he was really Irish.
See if who he really was and what he was. In the interim,
Jesus was Irish, you know.
Oh, boy.
He was.
Jesus was Irish.
He was Ethiopian.
No, Jesus was Irish. Let's see. He lived at home. He never had a job. His mother thought he was God. He was Irish. Believe me, he was Irish.
Seen any movies?
I did. I saw Air.
What'd you think of it?
Well, the cast looked good, but the first thing that struck me was Ben Affleck's hairdo. I thought he could look like Caesar.
Sid?
No, Marcus or Julius.
This the same people. The same people who know Jiggs and Maggie also know Sid
Caesar. Yeah, not Sid. Even go back further, he looked like Julius. I mean, I couldn't believe the rug he had on. I mean, it was ridiculous.
And I don't believe that Phil Knight wore a rug. I guess he must have, but I don't remember him wearing a rug.
Well, I mean, that thing was a blatant. That was a real piece. You know, that was a real blatant piece.
I saw it too. I thought it suffered a little bit from writing in the present about the past, so they could say, "Oh, all these guys." They were looking at Mel Turpin and all this stuff. But I really wanted Michael Jordan, and I really wanted Charles Barkley, and all of these guys.
Of course, we all know who's Stockton. He talked about Stockton.
Yeah, he talked about all those guys. He talked about artists.
Sam Bowie was a big bust. Mel Turpin. Yeah,
he did talk about
artists. Briefly, yeah.
But he talked about artists, and it was supposed to be 1984. Artists retired in 1985, so I don't know what they would have been talking about artists about. But the biggest problem that I had with it, and it would only be for me, is that Sonny Vaccaro in real life was like an unmade bed. He was like he real life he looked like Danny Aiello, and he acted like Sonny Corleone.
Ooh, wow.
He was, he was an unmade. He is and was an unmade bed, and ironically, he now works for Adidas. So all of that stuff was, it was look, if I was Sonny Vaccaro, I would want Matt Damon playing me too.
Right. So I mean, it was
I-
miscast.
Well, he was cast for.
They've made him more likable.
Yeah, they made him more. I mean, I worked for Pony's version of Sonny Vaccaro, who was the German friend Karl Ruhl, and they were wild days. They were fucking cocaine flying left and right.
Well, that why should it be different than the other industry in them days, right? Cocaine was the fuel for Wall Street, for every other thing.
Yeah.
But Karl Ruhl, who worked for you, I mean, you worked for him at Pony, they made a big thing about Adidas being German and how it.
Yeah.
Now, what does Adidas really stand for? I mean, I've heard 50 different things.
No, Adi Dassler was his name.
Adi Dassler, right?
Adi Dassler was his name, and it was founded by two brothers. A brother was actually Adi and Horst Dassler. They had a falling out, and then Horst started Puma.
Are you kidding me?
Well, Billy, would I kid you? I mean, you asked me a question.
Well, I mean, that's
I'm hurt. I'm hurt now.
That was a euphemism for like that surprises me that the two brothers split up and both formed successful shoe companies.
Yes, and they hated each other. And when we would go to Germany in 79, 80, they would try to find out for a national sporting goods convention. They would try to find out where the other brother was staying, the other company was staying, and if Puma would find out, they would cancel Adidas hotel reservations. So when they got there were no hotels for them. It was a
really
was
bitter shit, huh?
bitter shit.
Wow,
bitter shit.
How about your boy Karl Ruhl when he got involved in the fray? Was he more than apt to hold his own, or?
Oh, we were more than apt to hold our own. Yeah. I remember going to Muhammad Ali's dressing room, and he was fighting Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes was in Pony shoes, and Carl and I went to Ali's dressing room with $10,000 in a paper bag to give him if he would wear Pony shoes, and he didn't. But to his credit, he didn't take the money either. He just and there was Jane Kennedy was in his bedroom, and that was quite a party. There were two Muslims at the door, dressed in suits and bow ties.
Are we talking Jane Kennedy, your sportscaster?
Yeah.
Oh.
Jane Kennedy, the sportscaster, was in his room. And
what do you think about that, Billy?
I think good for him. That's what I think.
So
I think go Ali, home run.
Any all bets were off when it came to the shoe business in the 70s and 80s.
Wild West, huh? It was really
Wilder West.
And and I don't think did any of you guys realize the amount of money that was at stake when you talked to the amount of money that involved with the Air Jordans and shit? Were you thinking billions?
Well, they were thinking a lot. I mean, it was there were about 10 or 15 shoe companies all vying to be around after the shakeout happened. The marketing shakeout happened, and the companies that survived were Nike, Adidas, Puma, Converse, and to a lesser degree Reebok and New Balance. Reebok peaked in about the 90s, I think, but Reebok got into the aerobic shoe. That's how they made their bones in the business, selling multicolored aerobic shoes. They had peach-colored shoes and purple-colored shoes, and that appealed to women. And then they branched out into basketball. They since dropped off as a basketball power, but there were Pro Keds then, and Keds and Converse, and
that's what I wore
and Brooks, and a litany of companies.
If you had a pair of Keds when you were a kid, that was like you were in business. That's pretty much why. Converse didn't come until later.
Well, Converse always had they had the shoe with the star. Chuck Taylor All Stars,
right.
And they were like $9 or something. And if you had a pair of Chuck Taylor All Stars, high chucks, white, you
You're walking in tall cotton.
You were walking in tall cotton because you could afford $9.
Yeah.
I had no sneakers. I don't think I ever had a pair of sneakers except in gym class.
I had Keds, but when the soles went out, we used to wrap them up with tape. You know what I mean? Keep going. When I wore when I get the new pair of shoes or new pair of sneakers, I wore them out of the store.
You were a man of constant sorrow. Hey, what'd you find on Diddy Moore?
Was Diddy Moore a Mick or not? He was probably Hungarian or something.
His last name was his name was George Hormel.
Oh, Hormel.
Hormel.
Hormel chili.
Is it Hormel?
Yeah.
Is it the same Hormel as chili?
Yeah.
And then where did Dinty Moore come from?
Nice tag.
Hormel chili.
Did I ever tell you the big expose? I got a big expose.
Probably, but tell me again.
Probably. Haagen-Dazs ice cream, right?
Right.
Nice foreign name, great ice cream. Everybody likes Haagen-Dazs. I'm doing the inspections in the Bronx one day, the South Bronx. We're going around to different warehouses. And I walk into this factory. It's the Haagen-Dazs factory. It's made in the South Bronx. But what a labeling coup, right? I mean, made in the South Bronx, labeled Haagen-Dazs. You think in Denmark, Sweden, it's got to be.
Like they would make good ice cream. I would rather have ice cream made in the Bronx.
South Bronx, ice cream. Haagen-Dazs. True story.
Derek? Any word on Dinty Moore outside of George Hormel?
It actually,
Hormel?
well, I guess Hormel bought Dinty Moore, but it was based on a popular Irish saloon keeper, fabulous cook, and was created by George McManus.
Wow, so it is on the level, Dinty Moore stew.
Thank you.
I don't know what this means.
In his
strip.
tastes the same way in the Hormel can?
In his comic strip.
Oh, okay, comic strip. Bringing Up Father.
Bringing Up Father, Jigs and Maggie.
Jigs and Maggie, Bringing Up Father. That's right.
And it says it's based on one of his characters, James Moore, a real person who ran a popular Irish restaurant in New York.
You think the stuff in the can that Hormel makes tastes the same as the guy's stewing that he had
I don't know,
in the hot plate in New York?
I ain't eating it because I don't want the gout anymore.
You're on nothing but caviar and grapes.
Yeah, caviar and grape. By the way, have you ever had caviar?
It's awful.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It's awful.
But they tell you got to develop a taste for it. But, I don't get it. It's fish eggs. It's awful. Absolutely awful.
It's awful.
If you don't have a saltine with it, you're done. You're going to puke it right out.
Well, when we went to Russia in '88, they had it served by the plenty. They would put bowls of caviar on the table, and my executive producers gobbled that shit up. And they said, if you can bring it back to the States, we sort of smuggled it back to the States. And my friend Eddie Herbert, who's a great chef, we came over and he made a whole bunch of dishes with caviar, which, we had pasta with caviar sauce and everything. And that there was enough to disguise it that you could get it down. But man, boy, I don't get it.
It's super salty. I mean, it's crazy salty, and I don't get it either. I don't get the taste. You like it?
No, never liked it. No. I don't get it. I never got it.
My son the other day. Imagine a guy who first opened an oyster and said, "This looks like a good thing."
Yeah,
to eat."
it looks like snot.
Yeah, let me see if I get this down. I mean, I want to.
You like oysters?
I love oysters.
Yeah, I don't think
I can eat dozens of them. I go sometimes into a restaurant in New Orleans, and instead of ordering an entree, I just order 3 dozen oysters.
My wife likes oysters.
Oh man, I could slump them down. But the look at them, it's like swallowing somebody's tongue.
Well, it's like clams. I can't eat raw clams.
Oh, I love raw clams. You don't eat it?
No.
I like raw clams.
Well, I think we.
You like bearded clams?
On that note, why don't you?
What's a bearded clam? I don't. What is that?
What do you think it is? What do you think it is?
What is that, Billy?
Well, why don't you look at your microphone? Your microphone will give you a clue.
I can't see my mic. My God.
All right, let's get to our guest.
Get O'Connor back on track.
Actor Billy Moses from Falcon Crest, Perry Mason. He's been in so much stuff.
And worked with some iconic actors. I mean, he's like a bridge to the 40s, some of the people he's worked with. Really?
He's a bridge to a lot of places. He's a great actor. So, Derek, can you get on Billy?
Yes, I will do that. Speaking into my bearded clam.
Very bad at Zoom, so
Yeah,
No
well,
problem. Just
we're used to it by now.
hit that video. hit that video button, and we'll be able to see you.
the video button. Okay. Oh, there it is. Here we go. I was on a.
Oh,
There he is.
we got it.
Yeah.
All right.
We
I
got it.
was on a Zoom meeting the other day and spent the whole time on the meeting and didn't realize my camera was off. So until they told me afterwards.
Welcome,
All
my
right.
friend.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Good. We might as well just start, Derek.
Yeah, we're starting.
We
Okay,
started.
great.
Billy Moses, how are you? That's my partner, Billy. What's
Billy
your
too,
name?
Billy. Oh, Billy too. That's a tough one. Billy, tough one.
And that's Derek.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Derek, how are you?
How
Good, how
are
you
you,
doing?
Billy? Nice to meet you, pal.
So
Thanks for coming on.
You're just back from North Carolina? Where
No, I
were
was
you?
just back in Mystic, Connecticut. I just got back about 5 days ago.
And what were you doing back there?
I was doing a Hallmark movie, and we shot it in Mystic, which is the first time I've been back to Mystic since I shot Mystic Pizza in 1987.
Wow.
So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there was a story about you stood in front of the pizzeria to see if you were recognized, and nobody recognized you. What was it? What was the story? Why don't you set me straight on my
I'm just
story?
trying
On
to
my
get a
facts?
slice there. I'm just trying to get a
Well,
slice.
they had me connect, so it was this endless flight. I had like a 4-hour layover in Chicago, and then I finally got there at like 11 o'clock at night, and then went to wardrobe the next morning. I had some time off, so I went into Mystic and went looking around and started seeing some of the sights and the places, the seaport, the river, the bridge that goes up. And I said, well, I think the pizzeria's around there. And as I walked down the street, there's the pizzeria. And I walk up to take a picture of the sign, and these tourists are taking a picture of the sign. And I'm standing right next to them, taking a picture of the sign, and they go, God, we love the movie, and I'm standing right there listening to this whole conversation. They didn't even blink.
Wow.
No, yeah. Do they have pictures of the movie and the set all through the pizza place? Do they?
Oh yeah,
they
they run the movie on aloof, nonstop, and they're nothing but publicity pictures all over there, and it's and people come from every time you're walking downtown, because downtown Mystic's not much of there's not much there, but every time you walk there, you see people standing by the sign, and you see people going in taking pictures, going God, like that. And then there was other stuff that happened too. The first night on the movie that we were shooting, somebody came up to me and they said, well, you were really good in that scene. I said, oh, thank you. Said, well, where did you audition? I said, well, they offered it to me. And she goes, well, why? And I go, well, I was in this movie a lot of years ago that was kind of famous. And they go, was that Mystic Pizza? I go, yeah. They go, well, oh, my mom loved that picture. So she runs and gets her mom, and her mom comes up to me and goes, which one were you in the movie? I was the architect that seduced the babysitter. And she goes, oh my God, you were so hot.
It's like when you're it's great when they're speaking in past tense,
Yeah.
Like I knew the ball game was over when I was in a bar, and I said, could you send those two young ladies a drink? And then she said, thanks a lot, mister. I said, mister. I knew the ball game was over.
Yeah, Howard Morris, who was sort of my role model, and he was a show of shows with Sid Caesar and his Andy Griffith show. He played Ernest E. Bass. One day we were sitting in Chicago, and a lady walked up to him. She said, "You're," and he goes, she keeps snacking. Tip of my tongue. He goes, Howard Morris. She goes, no, that's not it.
Exactly. Well, you find that a lot. I find people come up to me and they go, I know you. You're from Ohio. It's like, no, I'm not from Ohio. Well, yeah, you are. It's like, no, I'm not. And he goes, well, why do I know you? And it's like, well, I'm an actor. No, that's not it.
It's crazy. Could you foresee Julia Roberts becoming such a big star when you were making Mystic Pizza?
She was good. You definitely knew that there was. I remember watching her shoot the scene where she spilled the barrel of fish into the Porsche, the convertible Porsche, and I remember thinking, wow, she's pretty damn good. So yeah, I mean, it was not surprising to me. Everybody in that movie was great. I thought everybody was pretty amazing. So
Why don't you run down the cast for our audience?
well, Vincent D'Onofrio, who was in Full Metal Jacket, and then had this. What was he did one of the
Yeah, I know. Private investigator.
Right, the Dick Wolf shows in New York.
Yeah.
He did that, and he's just a great character. He was also in the Will Smith movie. He played the alien in that with Tommy Lee Jones. Men in Black. He was in the original Men in Black. Right. He was the villain in that. Lily Taylor, who's just a spectacular actress, and you see her more of a character kind of actress. She's fantastic. Annabeth Gish, who I'm still friends with, was in it. She was a fabulous young actress, and at that time, and has gone on to just been in show after show and movie after movie. Has had 35 years later, so that's a very strong career.
Well, you've been fortunate. You worked with some tremendous actors starting back by the time you were Cole Gioberti in Falcon Crest.
That's right.
How young were you when you got that part?
I got that. I got the part 2 weeks before my 21st birthday. Wow. And found myself working with Jane Wyman. And I had done one small movie called Choices. I played Demi Moore's older brother in that. And as we were wrapping the movie, I got the pilot for Falcon Crest. I was going to USC at the time. I had to get a letter from the head of the studio from CBS, the president of CBS, asking if I could defer my international relations final so I could screen test for Falcon Crest, what was then called the Vintage Years. But that's how that happened. So, but yeah, I was really young. I didn't know much,
Jane Wyman talk at all about her years with Ronald Reagan?
She did not like to talk about Ronnie Reagan at all. She did not like to talk about that at all. It was really? No, she didn't like to talk about that. And she, my dad was in politics, and my dad had known Ron, and I had gone to school with Ron Jr., so I had known him too. So, but that was Jane would politely, and Maureen Reagan was a very good friend of my stepdad's. But Jane always sidestepped that conversation. Some people she was more emphatic than others. But yeah, she was not something she wanted to talk about.
And how were those 6 or 7 years on Falcon Crest for you? A learning experience for sure.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. To be, Jane was always kind of rough on me. Because she played on the other side of the family, and she had known Lorenzo, and Lorenzo was on her side of her family. So she kind of took Lorenzo under her wing. I was on the other side of the family, and it was like the Hatfields and McCoy kind of story. So I worked a lot with Bob Foxworth and Susan Sullivan, who are great, trained, seasoned professionals. So it was an amazing.
They were your parents, correct?
Yeah, they played my parents. It was an amazing training ground, and was really Bob in particular as a young actor was really good to me, and taught me a lot. So it was really a great thing. And then years later, after I left the show, Jane, who had been so rough on me, was really quite complimentary. She called me up years later, had seen some stuff that I had done, and called me out of the blue, just tell me how proud she was of me, which was like, it took a long time to get that kind of accolades from her. Well, about 5 years after I'd left the show, until I got that kind of affirmation from her. But she was great too. I mean, Jane's great lesson was, that has served me really well, was that, you were always on time, you were always prepared, and you're always polite to the crew, and at all times. And she was really, if you did not do that, your day was going to be very, very bad. And she was very, very strict about that. And that's that kind of old school professionalism I'm really lucky to have had that influence so early in my life. You
definitely worked with some old school icons, besides I mean, Raymond Burr. I mean,
I don't want to move off. I don't want to move away from Falcon Crest yet.
yeah, okay.
Mhm.
No worries.
Because you also worked with a fairly well-known actress by the name of Marion McCargo on Falcon
Yeah.
Crest. What's your relationship with Marion McCargo?
Well, that's my mother. That's my mom, and I don't think I actually did. She did all of her scenes with Morgan Fairchild, and it was she had a really wonderful experience on that. And she was great on the show. She was just great on it. Loved it, and had a really good experience. And she had been a little, she married my stepdad when I was 10, and then sort of became the politician's wife, and then had this sort of resurgence on Falcon Crest. And she had a great experience, and was really, I was really proud of her. She was really, really good on the show.
Did her being your mother, her career affect your wanting to be an actor?
Well, no, growing up, I was a jock. That's all I wanted to do was, I thought, in high school, I was a pretty good prep basketball player. I was all league. I was all CIF. I was team captain and most valuable player. So, and I went to a small college thinking that I would follow in my stepfather's footsteps, which is, go to college, play basketball, go to college, go to law school, and go into politics. And midway through the basketball season back east at Wesleyan University, the coach said, well, you should take a set design because it's a really easy class. And in those days, basketball, that was before the 40-second clock and before the 3-point line. So Wesleyan University, which was what do they call one of the poison ivies, one of the little three, they played full basketball games in four corners. They would, they'd try to pass the ball for 2 and 3 minutes at a time and win a game like 20-18. But, you're waiting for the defense to break out and somebody would, it was just the most boring form of basketball ever. And the coach didn't like me much because I was, he had me playing small forward at 6'1", and it was like, well, I'm a guard. And he goes, no, you're here, you're a forward. And like, you're always guarding guys 6'8" and getting elbowed in the nose all the time because you're always looking up. And it just wasn't fun. And set design became very fascinating to me, and I got more and more interested in that. And that was what just sort of like things turned. The things I thought I wanted to be were not the things that was making a lot of people happy, but not myself. And so I sort of hit this crossroads. And I came back to California and started working as a carpenter. Because my parents said, you got to work. So I was working as an apprentice carpenter. And then while I was doing that, somebody asked if, at a party, tapped me on the shoulder and said, you look a lot like this guy, Harry Moses, did about 4 years ago. I said, well, I'm his brother. I'm his younger brother. Yeah, I do look like him. And he goes, well, I'm his commercial agent. Have you acted? And just for no reason whatsoever, I said, oh yeah. And 2 weeks later, I was doing a Sprite commercial, with Jamie Rose, who ended up playing my sister on Falcon Crest. And from there, I got sort of the first time in front of the camera. It was sort of like everything. It was like, flying, falling, every kind of, I couldn't tell if it was horrible or wonderful or both. And I guess it was both. And I got interested, and then I went back to school so my parents would pay my rent. My dad didn't want me to act, so I went to SC, and I'd take the earliest classes I could, finish by 10, 11 in the morning, and go in commercial auditions in the afternoon. And I started going to professional workshops at night. But in about 2.5 years, I did about 18 commercials, and got my Screen Actors Guild card, and then got interested, and then met. I got Bobby Hoffman, who was then casting Happy Days, had a workshop, and it was through that workshop that I started getting an entree. And when it was my mom's agent found out that I was doing that, he said, well, would you like me to send you out? And that's how I started going out, So, growing up, being around my mom, it influenced me in the way that, when I was a little kid, when I was like in third grade, my mom got The Undefeated with playing opposite John Wayne. And, I remember going down to Mexico to go see my mom while she was filming the movie. And the thing for me as an 8th grader was, or a 3rd grader at 8 years old, that was so great, was that Roman Gabriel and Merlin Olsen were in the movie. And I was like, they were like gods to me, so that was pretty fascinating. And I got to follow Gabe around like a puppy dog for 5 days. And he was so sweet to me and great. And I got to play tag football, in between mountain ranges down in Durango, Mexico, with my little pee-wee football, and Roman Gabriel on one side, Merlin Olsen on the other, and Ben Johnson in his cowboy boots running around. It was really fun. It was really a kind of a neat experience.
Pretty good bodyguards, huh? Not bad for
really.
Bring a little muscle with me down here.
Yeah.
Did you? I know you did a lot of soap operas too. Do you find soap operas? A lot of people have had on here say they're harder to do than movies because the demands of having to learn those scripts every day is. Is that true? Or is it tougher than?
Well, I didn't. I just did the first soap opera I ever did was last November, December, and I had a 10-show arc on General Hospital, and playing Jeff Weber, who was a character from 30 years ago. And I was astounded at the, one, you have a lot of respect because it's hard work. It's really hard work. But, there were days when I had 35 and 40 pages of dialogue, and 35 and 40 pages of dialogue, one take, and expositionary stuff. So you're telling 30 years of backstory, about the time I was in Fiji and had an affair with my nurse practitioner. I mean, it just goes on. And my daughter, so it was astounding to me, in episodic television, you do a 1 hour show, and you sometimes you're most often there 12 hours minimum. But on a big day, on like a really big day, you might do 12 pages,
and that's a really big day, because on an average day, you probably do maybe 7. And,
yeah.
And if you're on a feature film, you will be lucky if you do 2.5 pages of dialogue.
That's exactly. Well, General Hospital, there were days I was there when they shot 122 pages in a day.
That's crazy.
What's that, 3 episodes?
That's the
4
other
episodes?
thing. Well, the whole experience of doing, those things. I mean, my days were very concentrated, but you don't know how many episodes you're doing, and you don't know when they're coming on. And I was going, God, I'm going to be really well featured in this show for a concentrated amount of time. But those, in those 7 or 8 days that I shot all this dialogue, sometimes I'd do 2 and 3 shows, but they were over 4 and 5 weeks. And you never knew when they were going to come in. So it was really a different experience, a great experience, and nice people, and hardworking people. And there are people that, the first AD came up to me and said, "Are you Rick's brother?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I started, with your brother. My first day your brother was working, and this would have been 1977. I was still in high school, and he was still there."
And what was that on?
That was on General Hospital.
Oh, gotcha.
My brother Rick was on General Hospital in the General Hospital.
If you could put a camera on me, Derek, if I was on General Hospital, I would say I would have the scripts written on my computer. I'd have lines written on the coffee cup. I'd have lines written inside the coffee cup. You have to cheat, don't you?
Well, no. Well, they don't. They don't. These days, they don't. They used to. In my brother's day, they used to have teleprompters. They do not do that now. There's no. You do a blocking rehearsal, and then you go back down to your dressing room. And then with COVID, it's a whole other experience, like being on a submarine. You check into into the stage. They give you a mask. You put the mask on. You go straight to your dressing room. You wait for them to call you on a speaker to go to makeup. You take your mask off. You get your makeup on. You put your mask back on. You go back to your room, and you hear them calling off the call sheet. And when your number comes up, you go upstairs and you shoot. and you shoot, you're in shock. I mean, the first day, it's like, I went up, they call you at noon, you go up at 3 and you shot 40 pages of dialogue by 3:40. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, it's just really unreal. I mean, it's just a very different experience. And I mean, people are good at it and can be really good at it, but I have new respect for it just because it's the amount of memorization and the amount of, like, you have to be just fast, and there's no looking back. There's no looking back.
And they shoot this 5 days a week, Billy? Is this a 5-day a week grind?
They shoot 3 weeks on and 2 weeks off. 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off, I think. And in those 5 days, they might shoot 9 or 10 shows, I think. So I'm not that familiar with it. I got to experience how I had my experience, and the only people, especially with COVID, they're so strict now, and maybe it's changing now. You only really relate with the people that you work with. The rest of the cast, you see them in the hall, but they don't even really want you talking in the hall because everybody's got to have their mask on, and they're very, very strict about the COVID. You test. The COVID testing the protocols are at ABC are really, and they must be right now.
Warner Brothers too.
Yeah, but so it's a very, and I guess it's starting to change now, but in a soap opera, because the way they organize it is so different than 1 hour drama. It's like being on a submarine almost, because all those dressing rooms over there at Sunset Gower, there's no windows in any of the dressing room. There's just a mirror and a couch, and you sit there just listening to the speaker, waiting for your thing. But I think you start to learn that, that's the period that's my study period, and my preparation period, because once you get up there, you do one blocking and you shoot, go, boom, and they get it, they go to the next one blocking, shoot, boom. Very rarely, occasionally, Frank Valentini will be around, the showrunner, and he'll say, no, I want you to do this a little differently, but you get one take at the different tact on the scene. So it's quite something. I mean, this is usually for, guys, young actors in their 20s. For me at this age to start there was it's like, wow.
Keeps the synapses going. That keeps the synapses shooting for sure. If you make a mistake, can they edit it, or they have to reshoot the whole thing, or you screwing everybody? I mean,
sometimes they, everybody makes a mistake. They go back and they have you pick up the line. But there's not a lot of that, and unless you really butcher it, they're not going back. They don't want to go back, So it's pretty, we used to, because I there was a period in my life where I did a lot of like Lifetime movies and a lot of these sort of women in distress movies, and they weren't terribly high budgets. And when you get late in the day, the directors used to call it one-er theater, which is, we don't have time, you got to get it in one. But soap opera, every day is one-er theater. I mean, every day is one-er theater, and it's a unique thing. I mean, one that and the actors that there are actors that have like the actress that played my daughter. She's been there 25 years, and I think she's had like 3 jobs, but this one for 25 years. It's quite something.
Billy started asking a question about, you worked with so many famous actors. You worked with Paul Sorvino, Hal Holbrook, Raymond Burr. Why don't you tell our audience some of your experiences with these great actors?
Well, Raymond and I were, Raymond, I had such a good experience in him. We were really fond of one another, and I got to know him, and he was really, such an interesting man, such a complicated man, such a, when he worked, you were talking about teleprompters, Raymond, he would surround the set with teleprompters. And when you would do the off camera, you'd stand behind the teleprompter, and Raymond would play the scene to the teleprompter, not to the actor. And the thing that was really crazy was that Raymond knew all the words. He knew the words. He didn't need the teleprompter, but he's such a kind of sensitive guy, I think that kind of interaction was that kind of intimacy was, I think there was, maybe that was hard for him, I think, but I had a lot of fun times with him. We shot the show was doing well, and NBC because it was performing well, let us go to Paris and shoot a movie. And so it was one of those just delightful experiences. I turned 30 in Paris with the crew, celebrating my birthday with the crew and cast and crew, and it was just a wonderful experience. I stayed afterwards and stayed for Christmas with my then wife, and it was just beautiful. But before, when we wrapped the movie, I went up stairs with a bottle of champagne, knocked on Raymond's door, and I said, "Hey, thank you. This was great. What a wonderful experience. I'm so happy, and just really glad to be part of all this." And he was big and sort of austere, and he answered the door, and he goes, "Oh, thank you for the champagne. I want you to know one thing." And I go, with that deep baritone voice, he goes, I go, "What?" And he goes, "You were born in the wrong year." And I went, "What?" He goes, "You were born in the wrong year." And he slammed the door right in my face. And he left. So I didn't know what that was about. Anyway, I spent Christmas there, and then the studio had sent a driver to take us back to the airport. And the driver said, "Well, I spent a whole day looking around Paris for a bottle of port from the year that you were born, but there was a freeze. There was no fruits." So we go back to Denver to shoot the thing, and they speed mark, and just before the director yells action, I bend down to Raymond, who's sitting at his desk, and I said, "I know why I was born in the wrong year." And Raymond laughed for 10 minutes straight. He giggled. He loved it that I figured that out. And he just was such a charming, interesting, generous man. And it's very fascinating on 100 different levels. It was really great to know him. There are a lot of different people that, I got to work with James Coburn right when he won the Oscar. I was doing a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie when they still made those. And what was interesting about James Coburn was he couldn't remember the lines, and he had these long speeches, and he couldn't remember the lines. And I'm kind of going, God, he doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have it. And then when you saw the thing, there are those actors that you work with when they're standing in front of the camera, you can't really see what they're doing, but when you see it on film, it's like some kind of magic happens. I mean, some kind of amazing magic happens. And he was incredible. He blew everybody off the screen. And there have been a number of people like that I've seen where you just couldn't really see, what he was doing, how effective what he was doing. The camera saw it in a way that you didn't see on the day. That's a very fascinating phenomenon.
Let me ask you something about that as a layman, Billy. If you see somebody like that doesn't seem like it's that magnetic until you see them on the screen, would they still be magnetic on stage? Would they still walk out there and you'd be glued to them, or is it the camera that loves them? I mean,
Well, I think that really skilled actors, like the person that I had an interesting conversation with about that was Hal Holbrook, and he did the movie with Peter Fonda. I think Midway was that. Yeah. He was working with Peter Fonda. I mean, Henry Fonda, not Peter Fonda. Henry Fonda, and he was in the scene with Henry Fonda, and he's going, God, the old man doesn't have it anymore. And Holbrook said the same thing, which is that, the movie came out and he blew me off the screen. And Henry Fonda, I mean, I saw him do the first Monday in October and with Jane Alexander, and he was stunning on stage. So I think that if you're a good actor, you're a good actor, and Fonda was one of those actors that was great on stage and on film. Not every film actor is good on stage, and not every stage actor is good on film. And then there are those that are good at both. They are different muscles, but good acting is good acting. It seems to really good actors seem to be able to fill up know how to use the space that they're in.
like Peter O'Toole said in My Favorite Year when he was portraying Errol Flynn, I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star.
Yeah, exactly.
Big difference.
Exactly.
Big difference. Yeah. You mentioned before when you were talking about, I'm sorry, Ironsides, Raymond Burr. When you talk about, excuse me, when you talk about Raymond Burr, you said that he actually knew the words, but he preferred to look at the cue cards because the intimacy, he didn't want to get involved if he was looking in your eyes because he was so sensitive. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think so. You know, I mean, you know, because I knew him when the cameras weren't rolling as well, and I think it was very hard for him. You know, he had this sort of with the crew to everyone in the crew. Just his crews loved him because you always had this sense, this sort of imperious thing, like the king has arrived. You know, and yeah, I think that he was a complicated man, really intelligent, but complicated on 100 different levels. You know what I mean? And had probably the best and the most of everything. And is a man of if I stood next to him, he was probably an inch taller than me, but was probably 4 or 5 of me thick. You know what I mean? And he just was a guy that it's hard to explain. He just was his appetite. He had a very wide and varied and interesting, distinct life. And I think, but on a personal level, that was hard for him. I think that was hard for him to be personal.
You appeared in so many television shows, from Mad Men to Homeland to American Horror Story, Chicago Med, Doubt, The Good Doctor. But you did a memorable role with Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder, especially Richard Langford. Can you tell us a little about working with Viola and that How to Get Away with Murder was like?
Well, that was great. I mean, that was I came for a day, like with 4 scenes, and they said, well, this part could recur, and everyone said, don't go. And it's like, no, I like, this is something in this part that I've not done. And I liked the part because he was, so determined. And, there are a few characters that when you play them, any room he walks into, he may not be the smartest guy in the room. I don't think he thinks of him, but he doesn't take a backseat to anyone in terms of intelligence, and had a strong bullshit meter, and was so determined to single-minded. Working with Viola was, God, I adore her. She's just what an interesting woman, and such a soulful woman, and so just I don't have enough good things to say. Being around her was such a pleasure in every way. I mean, and watching her and the way she comports herself as a professional is just, it's unreal. There's a reason why she's got an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony. I mean, she's I don't know, does she have a Grammy? I don't know, but she's got an Emmy and a Tony. I mean, she's just incredible. She's incredible with such a good hard worker, and
she steals almost everything she's in. She stole Fences, she stole Air, she stole that movie with what was the name? It's out recently, Derek. She stole that. She played
it. Crew in out in Mississippi or whatever.
No, I don't know, but she steals everything she's in.
Yeah, she's terrific.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's I thought such humanity in the help. I mean, she just was amazing. I mean, she's really, I mean, really a joy, really a pleasure to know her, to be around her, and her professionalism, Frank. I mean, you would just, she would blow you away just in terms of that. She's just there and ready and so professional and so treats her crew, everybody with such dignity and respect, and gets it back as she should. She gives the respect that she demands, and it's easy to give it to her because she is deserving of it. She's a really special person. I really, there are not enough nice things I can say about her.
You're talking about Ma Rainey's?
No, but she was great in that also.
Too. Yeah. I'm going to change the subject for a quick bit, Billy. Just curious. The name William Remington. Why Remington? That strikes me. I'm a bit of a history nut, and I see Remington, and I said, that's.
Well, my maternal grandmother's name was Mary Remington.
And was he any relation to the famous Remington?
No,
just okay.
Just as she was. No, she's not related to the famous Remingtons.
And you carried down the Remington name because your daughter, who's a fine actress, is named Remington Moses.
Yeah, Remington Elizabeth, and then my youngest daughter is named Mary McCargo after my maternal grandmother, who I was very close to and loved very much. It was, kind of, my mom got divorced when I was very young. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up.
I got another question for you. The fact that you're so diverse. I mean, you've directed a couple of films. You've been in soap operas. You've been in commercials. You've been in regular films. You've been in Hallmark films. What is your preference and why? I mean, what do you prefer working in? Does it make a difference? Or you just want to be working, or is there something that you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm an actor. I mean, I want to work. I want to work, and I go where the opportunities are. If it's on the page, it starts with what's on the page, and if there's something good on the page, that's a great starting point. And then, secondarily, if you get to work with people like Viola Davis or, William Hurt or, whoever, they don't even have to be, just people that are interested and involved in the work and involved in trying to stand these words up and give life to them,
Do you have a particular favorite actor you worked with? Is there a particular favorite actor that you worked with that you admired, that you were blown away by? Or?
Well, I got to work with Harris Yulin, who's a pretty established Broadway actor. Working with him was very, very interesting because you learn things about, just sometimes little things that they say, which is can be really enlightening. It's an interpretive craft or art form or whatever you want to say. But I guess working with Harris, who had all this experience on Broadway, we did a moment and that we improvised in a movie, and the crew, just fell over and it made it in the movie, and they loved the moment. And it was like, well, I didn't know why it worked. And he goes, well, what he said to me was, well, the audience is going to endow it. We don't have to know. The audience is just going to give it the meaning. And so, like, okay, I did this thing. I don't know why it worked, but it worked. But the audience sort of filled in the blank that I didn't even know. I was just kind of trying to be the character. So that was kind of fascinating. I worked with Michael Parks. You remember him? Then Came Bronson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had. He was fascinating in that he when he works on film, he tries to keep everything as small as possible. Really, he underplays everything, but in underplaying everything, it doesn't mean it's casual. There's like a stiletto kind of sharpness to every moment, and it's delivered with such precision. That was fascinating for me to watch because he's another one of those guys that. At first glance, if you watch him work, it seems like he's kind of being too underplayed or too quiet. But what happens when he starts speaking that quietly, you find as playing in the scene with him, you have to really start listening, and then you watch just how sharp each moment was, how specific, and how great intention, but you don't see the work, and the work becomes seamless. And so I thought that was getting to know him and getting to work with him on this, kind of strange movie I did with Julia Stiles, was really an interesting experience, because he was so sly and so darn good. You really had to be on your toes, and that was a lot of fun. Trying to, it's like setting the high jump bar at 7 feet, and finding some way to clear it. So I thought he was pretty fascinating. I mean, there's been so many neat people. Now it's more than anything. 40 plus years in, I feel like I'm just starting to understand it. So, it's who you work with, and what the material is, and the way that people work, because every actor works a little differently, and they have their way, and then you have your way, and then you come together, and what you're doing in that moment. And theater is a little different. I haven't done a ton of theater, but I've done theater that that's challenging, because each night is different and each audience is different. It's the same material, but the way it plays on each day of the week with each audience is different, and you're different too, because what you bring in every day is different. Film is exciting, and because you have, there's a script and a call sheet and a shooting schedule, and it's like, well, we have 3 hours to do this scene, and this scene is going to be what it is. We're making this reality in the next 3 hours, and what it's going to be, we don't exactly know, and I guess when it gets really exciting, it's like, I remember when I was I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I was playing on the blacktop. We used to play touch football. And I remember throwing a football, and the gym coach was standing behind me, and he goes, "Good throw," but everything went in slow motion, and I could watch the football spiral, and it went right to where the guy had his hands. I mean, it just was like, it was like on a string, and went exactly there, but it played in slow motion. And you don't get that often when you act, but there are times when you're there doing the scene, so focused in the scene, that you can actually feel the whole crew's concentration focus in on the stage, and they're with you, and you're there in the moment, but you're also aware of everything that's around you, and it starts to get this slow motion kind of effect, and that is the absolute, for me, the thing that is like, that's the thing that just turns me on so much. It's like it's better than the best martini or whatever your thing is. It's really a special thing that really gives me I get really excited about that, and you don't get it all the time. You just don't. And I'm sure Frank, you've been on sets and you've seen that, where you've seen something like, wow, I was just part of something that was really sensational,
Yeah, I was like the pilot of Murphy Brown was like that. When Candace sang "Respect" at the end of the show, I knew it was on the air. It was a special moment.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing you bottle. That's the thing you want to try to bottle.
Yeah. You don't get that zoned-in feeling every time you come into here, Frank. You don't get that same.
Not anymore.
Yeah,
Not anymore. Hey, Bill, let me ask a question. You were married to Tracy Nelson for 10 years. What were holiday dinners like at the Nelsons with Ozzy and Harriet and Tracy and Rick and David, and was Mark Harmon in the picture yet? And Pam Dauber and whatever.
Well, Mark and I went to the same high school. We played for the same coaches. He's older than me, but I've known Mark since I was 13. I've known Mark long, because he used to come and play Thursday night basketball in my high school, and the alumni used to come, and I was the youngest. The coach that coach invited me to come as a youngster and play. So I had known Mark from the time I was 13.
So you're a Harvard Westlake guy, huh? Well, before it was Harvard Westlake. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd known Mark a very long time, and we had associations through the same coaches, and then, Tracy, I met Tracy when she was 19. We were doing the Battle of the Network Stars together. That's where we met. And, Rick died. I only met him once. And then he died in that plane crash. And I'm actually the one that told Tracy her father had died in that plane crash. So I didn't know him very well, but the one, and Ozzy was gone before I came into the picture. I knew David. David was really sweet, very quiet, very, very, very quiet man, very quiet, but very nice. But Harriet was the one that I knew, and Harriet was just the best. I mean, and Harriet was not, Mrs. Milk and Cookies.
No, I understand she had a tongue on her or mouth on her.
Oh, that wasn't really the thing with Harriet, was that she was a big band singer.
Yeah.
I mean, she used to sing at the Cotton Club, and she was a hot mama. I mean, and Ozzy was a band leader who sort of turned her through the radio show into Mrs. Milk and Cookies. But Harriet was a fourth generation vaudevillian. So she didn't know how to cook at all. And she used to smoke Marlboro Reds and drink a martini every afternoon at 5 o'clock. And she was just fun and gregarious, and was really interested in, she was really neat. She was so much more than Mrs. Milk and Cookies. In fact, I think she had a little anger that Ozzy put her into that box. I think she felt a little resentment about that, in all honesty.
Well, I never would have figured that, right? The old Ozzy and Harriet show, you always thought, Pop's home, and then the...
Right, he's wearing a cardigan, and she was at home.
And her pearls.
Picking the pipe, the slippers,
She didn't know how to cook. She didn't cook.
Derek, you got any questions for?
Yes, I got a couple questions.
Shoot.
Okay, so let me see which one I want to start with. First of all, have you ever played a serial killer?
I have, yes.
Weird question.
What was that like? And what role was that? Because I didn't know that you actually played a serial killer.
I did one. I used to, when the TV movies were a big thing, I used to do. There was a period of I probably made 50 different TV movies, but for a long time, I played a lot of wolf in sheep's clothing kind of parts.
Okay.
And Lifetime in particular, I would start out as a nice guy who ended up terrorizing these poor women until, at the end of it, he gets his just rewards. So those roles are a lot of fun because they're really flashy, and people that are those kinds of, that have that kind of malice in them. Yeah. They don't see themselves, from an acting point of view, they don't see themselves as evil. They see themselves as justified, giving people what they deserve, so you have to create a reality in your mind that, true or not, but you have to play it with conviction that somebody has done you wrong and you're going to get even, and
I feel like you're getting into character right now.
Well, that's kind of what they're fun parts to play. I did one, where I played twins, alone with a stranger, and I played a good twin and an evil twin. And I played the evil twin charming, and the good twin is sort of an asshole, which was an interesting twist. And, Pierre David is he supplies, he's made probably more TV movies than anybody you can imagine, and he had sort of a recipe for these Lifetime suspense thrillers. I played a lot of heavies doing that, where I was scare people and then eventually get what they deserve.
Got it. Wow. I actually didn't see that in the research I did.
Yeah.
So funny that I picked up on that. The reason
Mm.
why is I don't know if you've ever been told this. When I first heard your voice, I thought of it's like a cross between Billy Zane and Ted Levine. Have you ever heard that before?
That's interesting. I've never been compared to Ted Levine, although I did meet him once. And Billy Zane, well, I guess I've never been compared to him either. A lot of people, when I did the Aleve commercials, a lot of people said I sounded like John Hamm, which okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. And in my neck, that's a good transition. The other question I had was, what was it like being a sex symbol? Because you were something of a sex symbol back in the day. Maybe now.
Yeah,
as well.
Look, we can see you blushing from here.
In those days, Heather Locklear and I had the same manager, and that was this woman was, she felt that was a good way, did a lot of the beefcake stuff, had me training all the time and had a lot of pictures of my shirt off and stuff like that. And I guess, 80s television, that was what was in, big hair and, the women all had big hair and shoulder pads, and the guys walked around with their shirts off a lot. And I guess at 22 and 23, I guess I started rocking up in those days, lifting a lot of weights. And what was it like? Yeah, it was, kind of silly.
Well, Network Stars was kind of silly. That was an homage to the 80s. And
Yeah, it
70s.
was. That was fun. Howard Cosell was really nice to me. I liked that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's a
And
pretty
that's what I would do on a weekend anyway. So for me, it was like, well, it was really fun for me.
And it was in Malibu, right?
Was that, yeah, it was at
Pepperdine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They did one down in Mexico too, and they did one. They did another one, Star Games, later on, where all the shows had a team, and they competed. Everybody competed, and Falcon Crest ended up winning that one.
I could just hear Howard. And in the blocks is Billy Moses from Falcon Crest.
Yeah, no,
Go get him, Billy.
He said on national TV, I was the best athlete that ever did the show.
Wow.
Well, hey, that's not bad.
Nice.
Coming from old Howard.
Yes.
That's pretty
Well,
good
at
certification.
23, I was a pretty good athlete. Yeah. Once upon a time, I was a pretty good athlete.
Yeah, you did the Jane Doe movies too, 9 of them, right? Made for TV. You got good memories.
Yeah,
of
that's
that?
what. Yeah, the girl that played my daughter, and that was the lead in this movie I just did for Hallmark Out in Mystic. So Jessie Schramm's her name. She's on Chicago Med right now. Very nice girl. So we had sort of a reunion out there, and that was kind of fun. She was 20 years ago. She came to she had just come to Los Angeles, and she got this job doing these Jane Doe movies. I worked with Leah Thompson, who's a really nice woman. I like her a lot.
They're still huge in the United Kingdom, right? They still replay those over and over again in the United Kingdom. From what I understand, you're getting pretty
The
good
Jane Doe
residuals from
Huge.
Well, that's news to me.
Maybe I was misinformed. You be getting the check, so you would know better than me.
I'll know when I get the check. Yeah.
You have any other questions, Billy?
No, not really. Just I really appreciate your candor, and talking about how silly it was to be a beefcake guy back in the 20s. To me, it would have been a blessing. I would have loved it.
Well, if you look at 80s television, I mean, my goodness, I mean, this is definitely, in terms of quality, this is the golden age of television. I mean, those shows, when you look at them in hindsight, they don't, they don't hold up particularly well in terms of artistically, but the difference, in those days, Falcon Crest, it was the number 3 show in America, averaged a 39 share. And the share point then was bigger. I think it was 1.2. I think it's 900,000 now. So, Falcon Crest used to average 40 million people a night, on CBS. It was a different era. It was sort of the golden age of television. And that era is, it's a golden age in terms of quality. There's so much good television on right now, so much, and so much high quality stuff with good storytelling.
What do you like?
What do you like?
Yeah, what do you like?
What do I like?
television? Yeah, what's
Well, you know, I'm a member of the Television Academy. I've been watching Shrinking a lot. I like that a lot. I've been watching Ted Lasso. The Crown I like. I like Narcos. I think that's pretty fascinating. There's a lot of stuff that I like. You know, I watch a little bit of Better Call Saul. Breaking Bad.
all good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good television all across the map. And it's sort of story driven. You know, my all time favorite I think is The Sopranos. You know, I was so knocked out by that opening episode. You know, with the mobster with a midlife crisis and an anxiety disorder. It was, okay, well, the humanized mobster. I thought that was just such brilliant storytelling.
Hey, before we let you go, was Frank Raymond was the DP on Falcon Crest, wasn't he?
He sure was. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with Frank on Suddenly Susan and For Your Love. He segued into multicams, but he was a character, boy.
He was. He got me flying with him in his airplane. He said, come fly with me in my plane. We got in the plane. He put an instructor in the seat and me in the pilot seat and said, okay, you're taking off. I was like, what? And so, I ended up flying Frank's plane a number of times.
Yeah, he used to tell me about the times he used to fly Jane Wyman.
Oh, really?
Yep. He flew Jane a couple of times. He was quite a character with his pipe and
his pipe. Yes, he was. He was quite a character.
He was a great photographer too. He took black and white photos like Ansel Adams.
Really?
Yeah.
He gave me one for Christmas, which was valued at like $5,000 or so. And
oh, really?
I got to hang it up in my Pebble Beach house.
Well, you gave me some coffee mugs.
Yeah, yes, but they were a Mick, a Mook, and a Mike coffee mugs.
Well, they valued at $5,000.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a check.
Listen,
what happened to Frank?
I don't know. I believe he's still alive, but I believe he's retired now in Northern California. I hope he's well. Anyway, I hope you're well. This will air around Father's Day, so I wish you a happy Father's Day.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
And it's been a great pleasure having you. Continued success.
Billy, a real pleasure to meet you, brother.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming on. No kidding, man.
My pleasure. Sure. Talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in those serial killer future roles.
You'll see me sweating in tight close-ups.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you again.
Thank you again. That was great, man. Great guy.
Yes, he was. Guy. Really good.
I like that he mentioned The Sopranos as his favorite TV. I had to tell you, Derek, I cracked me up because I thought of you, for obvious reasons. But you just watched The Sopranos recently, right? The whole thing.
Yeah.
Remember the scene where the two guys are throwing a guy off the bridge, and there's three black guys at the end of the bridge, and after he throws them off the bridge, so the three black guys, he sees them down there, and he walks down, he gives them a couple $100. He goes, "You see anything?" The guy says, "That's some sad shit. Motherfuckers said you won't live no more."
Why they gotta be black guys? Why they gotta be black guys? Why they gotta be black guys? Why couldn't they be three guys?
They were three guys, but they happen to be black. That's some sad shit. Motherfuckers said they won't live no more.
Having watched that show recently, man, you really realize how they kind of stereotype and pigeonhole ideas in people's minds about.
Yeah.
Well, about everybody. My mother hated The Godfather.
Yeah.
Because it made Italians look bad.
That's what she said.
Really?
She. I went to see it with her and my friend Johnny Marks, and we came out. She was livid.
Really?
Yeah. She
perpetuates all of those Italian myths about them being mobsters.
I mean, if Derek, she was as mad as Derek would be if she saw an episode of Amos and Andy now.
Oh, Jesus! I couldn't sit next to Derek watching Amos and Andy. I think he'd reach over and just kill me if I started laughing. He'd just strangle me. Oh man. Yeah, that was it was really cool. And they're talking about Raymond Burr being that kind of
sensitive,
very sensitive, very sensitive. Don't get me started. You ain't beating me.
He was,
You ain't bait
he
me.
was sensitive.
He was very sensitive.
It couldn't look him in the eye.
I'm not going there.
Good. Good for you.
Good
Billy,
for me.
Billy Connolly.
Discipline.
Billy O'Connor is used discretion.
Discipline.
I called you Billy Connolly. That's
Billy
a,
Connolly.
that's
Listen, that's a great compliment.
Billy Connolly.
That's a great compliment. Thank you very much, because one of my favorite comics that ever lived.
Well, one of my favorite comics is Billy O'Connor.
What a sweetheart, right? You see
So-
Yeah,
that?
you had a joke earlier today. You want to tell it again?
Which one? Which one?
Hey, come on, I'm gonna put you on a single. Go.
I had this old girlfriend. See, she told me. She told me a gynecologist said she couldn't have sex.
Wait, you were doing voices.
Yeah,
do the woman's
do
voice.
our
and then
voice.
do-
The New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
like a-
we can. That's,
Come on.
Come on. You're on stage. Come on.
My girlfriend tells me. She says, I can't have sex for 3 weeks. My gynecologist and I can't have sex. I said, oh, yeah? What'd your dentist say?
Good. Let's.
Bad timing.
No, good timing for us to get off.
Get off on that bad joke.
See you next week,
See you
folks.
next week. Thanks for tuning in. And
Once again, another week. We have not promoted our 3 books.
did you say another week or another week?
Another week.
Another week.
Whoa.
Okay, well, read some books.
Read some books,
Read some books.
Prefer-
Any books.
preferably R4.
Preferably R4. Yes, read something. Read Lamar's Gamble. It'll do you good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for
tuning
tuning
in.
in.
Thank you
And,
for
I
Derek
hope
for
to
making
see
this
you.
all possible,
Derek, you're the man.
and thank you, Billy Moses, for being a terrific guest.
Yeah, he was.
Who's better than you?
No bad.
Nobody. Thank you.
Next week's guest, actress and co-star of the NBC series Night Court, India de Beaufort.